Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Robin Wansley, and I am the chair of the Administration and Enterprise Oversight Committee. I am going to call to order our regular meeting for today, Monday, September 9th, 2024. But before I do that, I do want to offer a friendly reminder to all committee members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcasted live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. With that said, I will now have the clerk call the roll to verify we have quorum.
Councilmember Vita.
Present.
Allison is absent. Cashman.
Present.
Vice President Chuktai.
Present.
Vice Chair Palmisano.
Present.
Chair Wansley.
Present.
We have 5 present.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum, and then we also have just been joined by Councilmember Ellison.
Here.
I will remind my colleagues that we'll be using speaker management today, so please be sure to sign in and get in queue at your discretion. But before we move on to the rest of our agenda, it is my understanding that Vice Chair Palmisano do have an item to amend to our agenda today, so I will invite her to speak to that item and make that motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As discussed, there was a resolution for travel. It's just a gift acceptance for a staff person in the mayor's office, Mr. Jaramillo, to attend an Environmental Protection Agency forum of local government agencies. And as is our practice and is customary, we try to have these go through council and get approved before the actual travel occurs. So thank you, Mr. Jaramillo, for submitting this, and I'd like to add this to our agenda to consider with some other ones today. I will move that, and I guess I need a second.
Second. All right, that motion has been seconded. Looking to see if there's any discussion, anyone in queue. Seeing no one in queue for discussion on the motion to amend the agenda, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, there's none. The ayes have it, and that motion carries, and we'll likely just take that up with the rest of the consent agenda. Now we're moving on to the public hearing part of our agenda. Our first item today is a public hearing confirming the mayoral reappointments of Candace Falk and William Walker Jr. to the Civil Service Commission. I see HR Director Nikki Odom has already joined us at the podium to give a brief introduction to the Civil Service Commission before we open the public hearing. And I also want to remind, if there's anyone here for the public hearing, please go to the clerks to the corner to sign up to testify, because we'll be doing that part right after the introduction from Director Odom. But with that, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Odom. I am the Chief Human Resources Officer here for the City of Minneapolis. And I would like to provide some background on the Civil Service Commission and the appointment process, as well as endorse Commissioners Walker and Falk for another term. Minneapolis Civil Service Commission is an independent 3-member commission that is authorized by the city's charter. It oversees the city's employment practices, including hiring, promotion, discipline, and discharge for certain city employees. The Commission promulgates rules that cover all aspects of employment. The Commission hears appeals from employees who believe that the rules have been unfairly applied to them, and hears appeals from employees who have been recommended for discharge from their positions or who have been recommended for suspension of 30 days or more. As I understand it, this arrangement was established to ensure that the application and enforcement of the employment rules of the city were not political, but were based solely on merit and objective evaluation measures. The Commission is a neutral body advocating neither for the interests of employees nor for the city. The city charter requires that 3 civil service commissioners be residents of the city of Minneapolis, that they favor merit, efficiency, and affirmative action in public service, and that they hold no other office or employment under the federal, state, municipal, or any other government or department, agency, court, or political subdivision of any such government. Historically, but not uniformly, commissioner appointments have typically been made with one commissioner having a human resources background, one having a legal background, and one having a labor background. Each commissioner serves a 3-year term. In accordance with past practice, at the conclusion of the commissioner's terms, vacancies were posted according to the current process for advertising vacancies for boards and commissions in the city. Applications were screened for Minneapolis residents and professional qualifications relative to knowledge of employment practices and labor management issues, as well as a commitment to fairness, neutrality, and affirmative action in line with the requirements of the city charter. I can, with confidence, state that these individuals have consistently demonstrated their expertise, qualifications, and unwavering neutrality in carrying out the responsibilities entrusted to them by our city's charter. Their experience and deep understanding of our city's unique challenges ensure that they meet and often exceed the criteria set forth in the charter. They have upheld the principles of fairness, integrity, transparency in every decision they've made, helping to maintain the public's trust in our civil service system. Reappointing these commissioners will provide continuity and stability, allowing them to build on the progress already made and continue serving the best interest of our employees and thereby the community. I respectfully urge you to support their reappointment and allow them to continue their valuable work on behalf of the city of Minneapolis. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Director Odom. Will any of the candidates like to also speak before I open up for the public hearing? No? All right. Well, with that, I understand that and the clerk is running down the sign-up sheets. Oh, dang. All right. So I understand that we have 0 people signed up at this point to testify. Again, if there's anyone here who has not signed up, you're more than welcome to see the clerks. But it seems like that portion will not be necessary. So with that, I will open up for any comments or questions from my colleagues. So we're going to look at Q. And first, I see Vice Chair Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Both of these candidates are reappointments by Mayor Fry, and they also both happen to live in the 13th Ward. They're extremely qualified for these roles, and I'm very proud to be their elected representative. So I just wanted to thank you for your service to our city, and I look forward to your continued contributions. Thanks.
Excuse me. Thank you, Vice Chair Palmisano. Next in queue, we have Councilmember Cashman.
Thank you, Chair. I also just wanted to extend my gratitude to the 2 commissioners for being willing to serve on the Civil Service Commission and for Director Odom for presenting on that today.
All right. Seeing no one else in queue, I will move to approve the reappointments to the Civil Service Commission. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, there's none. The ayes have it, and that motion carries. Congratulations to the appointees. All right. Next items that we have, which is items 2 through 32 on the consent agenda. I will now read those for the public record. Starting with item number 2, which is a passage of resolution for election judge and deputy city clerk appointments for the November 5th, 2024 general election. 3 is a passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the Metropolitan Police Department of travel expenses. 4 is a passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the North American Biochar Council of travel and lodging expenses. 5 is a passage of resolution for gift acceptance from International Association of Crime Analysts of travel expenses. 6 is a passage of resolution for gift acceptance from the Hunt Institute Early Childhood Policy Fellowship of travel and lodging expenses. 7 is a data request process staff direction. 8 is a Neighborhood Safety Department Management Updates Legislative Directive. 9 is a procurement practices for violence prevention contracts legislative directive. 10 is a bid for First Avenue South reconstruction green stormwater infrastructure project. 11 is a bid for Minneapolis Convention Center ballroom carpet replacement project. 12 is bid for Hilton Ramp waterproofing project. 13 is a bid for large diameter sewer cured in place pipe lining 2024 project. 14 is a bid for Minneapolis Public Works traffic control devices. 15 is council action amendments related to a bid for a lead service lines replacement. 16 is council action amendment related to a contract for partnership engagement fund projects. 17 is master contracts for 2025 through 2027 Convention Center and Target Center Consulting Pool. Number 18 is a contract with various vendors for security services for finance and property services. 19 is a contract with Delta Dental of Minnesota for dental insurance services. 20 is contract with Bridge Healthcare Partners for school-based clinic revenue cycle management services. 21 is contract with Workday, Inc. for an enterprise resource planning system. 22 is a contract with Cure Violence Global for Minneapolis Technical Assistance Program Initiative. 23 is a contract amendment with Rice Lake Construction Group for Fridley Filter Plant Rehabilitation Project. 24, contract amendment with CDM Smith, Inc. for Fridley Filter Plant Rehabilitation Project. 25 is contract amendment with Deb Garvey Communications, LLC for website services consulting. 26 is contract amendments with various organizations to continue comprehensive programs in response to illicit opioid abuse. 27 is a contract amendment with DataNet Systems Corporation for a speaker management module. 28 is a contract amendment with Messenger Construction Co. Inc. for the Convention Center Exhibit Hall door replacement project. 29 is contract amendment with Shaw Lundquist Associates Inc. for City Hall Restack Phase 3C. 30 is a contract amendment with N. Harris Computer Corporation for upgrades to the utility billing system. And 31 is contract amendments with various vendors for additional materials, labor, and equipment necessary for the alley snow plowing services. 32 is a contract amendment with Minneapolis Public Housing Authority for communications equipment at 3121 Pillsbury Ave and 315 Lowry Avenue North. And actually, we have item 33, essentially, or the walk-on item for the gift acceptance that we will be taking up. I really am not looking forward to reading all of that on Cal at full council. That was long. With that, do we have any discussion or questions on these items? I put myself in just to give some context on the 3 items that I brought forward on the consent agenda, starting with item number 7, which is data practices staff motion. Data requests are a cornerstone of government transparency, and I've been contacted by a number of residents with concerns and questions about how data requests are triaged, what are the timelines for completion, and why some data requests seem to take far longer than others for reasons that does not necessarily seem to connect with the scope of information that's being requested. So this directive creates the opportunity for our legislative department's record and information management division to share some of the basic processes regarding our data request systems, their functionality, if there's any potential challenges with it, and to share any information they have around key metrics that they're using to evaluate the effectiveness of our data request processes. Number 8 is NSD, which is the Neighborhood Safety Department Management Updates LD. So I, along with Councilmember Chavez and Council President, have been attempting to work with OCS leadership on the plan to address some known operational challenges within the Neighborhood Safety Department, also known as NSD, since early this year. On April 17th, my office sent an email outlining a number of major concerns regarding the potential mismanagement of NSD. I also forwarded that same memo to council on May 10th, so you all have a copy of that in your inbox. But that memo requested that OCS leadership come before AO to provide a transparent public update on how they were going to address some of those identified management concerns and how they were going about restoring critical partnerships. Following the submission of that memo, a number of council members met with Mayor Fry and OCS leadership to discuss those concerns further, and there was shared agreement around having that update come before a committee, though that at that time it was for earlier this summer. That clearly has not happened because we're in September, though my office has worked very extensively with council leadership to coordinate that on numerous occasions. So that said, this LD reflects the outstanding questions that we have not been able to receive from OCS leadership. And, you know, when council cannot obtain the information through proactive means or informal inquiries, then legislative tools is often the last tool that we have to be able to get that information. And then going to item number 9, which is procurement practices for violence prevention contracts. Earlier this year, council members, and we've talked about this, was approached by a number of our violence prevention partners just around concerns in their experience in having not being paid and just challenges that they're experiencing or have been experiencing with the city's or NSC's contract processes. It took a great deal of corrective efforts by Councilmember Chavez and myself and a number of my other colleagues who've been in contact with the administration to get those checks cut and to have some, again, corrective actions move forward. But in recognizing that, you know, this pattern wasn't sustainable and recognizing the urgent need to continue corrective action so no partner is ever put in that position again. Councilmember Chavez and I worked with OCS to get the Neighborhood Safety Department to give an update to the Public Health and Safety Committee earlier this summer. That presentation, though, provided very little coverage on the department's contracts processes, and the director even shared that they found that the department's existing staggering contract processes was working quite effectively in spite of us hearing from partners themselves saying that it was not. So Councilmember Chavez and I knew it was then imperative to then hear from nation-leading subject matter experts about how best to organize our contract processes to support the success of our violence prevention efforts. So in early August, we brought several national violence prevention organizations to the Public Health and Safety Committee who discussed national best standards when it comes to violence prevention efforts. And they also named that they are more than happy to help the city and NSD review their own contract processes to see if they align with those national best standards. NSD has made progress in restoring some of the partnerships with some of the organizations that presented. One is even on the consent agenda today, which I'm excited to see. So now the department and the administration does have these resources available to carry out that review. So this LD basically asks the administration using those resources and technical assistance to give us an update on how procurement practices for violence prevention contracts, how that's going, as well as, you know, how is it aligning with those best practices at the national level, so that we're making sure we're utilizing them to support the effectiveness and strength of our violence prevention efforts. So just wanted to provide some context on those three, one staff direction and 2 legislative directive. And then I see Vice Chair Palmisano in queue.
Thank you. Madam Chair, first a quick clarification. Are we voting on the add-on to the agenda today, the gift acceptance for ed in the consent agenda? Okay, thank you. I just want to make that clear for my colleagues. My second point is just to make a couple of comments relevant to item number 7, which is the staff direction on data requests. And this is a major lift for a team already overwhelmed with a backlog of data requests. And I'm curious, have you engaged Assistant City Clerk Rommelhoff as to his team's capacity to complete this work in just 2 months?
Yeah. Thank you, Vice Chair Palmisano, for the question. So we wrote the data request staff motion, understanding that we've allocated substantial resources to the legislative department to do data requests. So it seemed this should be relatively easy to fulfill. The points on the staff motion are pretty simple. Ideally, this is information that would be readily already available. So we felt this was pretty doable in the time that we allotted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not so sure that the members of the city clerk's team necessarily agrees. And I understand the need to be transparent and best understand how the city handles data requests. I agree there's a lot. I agree that data requests are a key component of accountability and of democracy ultimately. But I do question the timing on this because it's a very detailed request that appears to me, just as a reader, to take a lot of time to satisfy. Which is more important, meeting the data needs of the public or reporting to us? I would simply like to know, how far behind are they? That would be useful in looking to potentially resource things differently, and that's in our lane as a city council to do as we move forward on the budget process. So I just wanted to make that point in this staff direction. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, Vice Chair Palmisano. So I do want to name the date that's listed in the staff motion is the last AO date of the year. So ideally, we wanted to get that information before we concluded business amongst this committee. And then we go into budget season, which takes up basically the remainder of our time. Also, the point that you raised is actually covered in the section 3 of the staff motion, where it does ask about that backlog. And I think, this body will absolutely want this information, especially knowing that data request has been a place where we faced litigation and loss and had to pay out a settlement related to those dynamics. So absolutely, I think just as we saw last term, it was identified that it was needed to give additional resources to the clerk's office to fulfill data requests. It seems like that volume has not shrunk and it's still growing. So in order for us to know how best to support our legislative department with those requests, we need the information presented. So I'm very much looking forward to staff being able to present that information like they did last term to help us know how we can best show up for them as we're also having these budgetary conversations. So with that, seeing no one else in queue, I will basically motion to take a voice vote on the entire consent agenda, including the add-on or walk-on item. So that said, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, there's no nays. So that motion carries. So our next item is a contract amendment with Sound Thinking, Inc. for Gunshot location system. This item was initially on our August 5th meeting agenda with the staff recommendation, but as many of you all are aware, we've had just extensive conversations with OCS leadership and the administration over the last 2 meetings, and as a result of that, staff has prepared a second proposal, which is in front of you all, but the entire packet of documents that you have in front of you includes both proposals, the original one and the modified one that staff has developed with their respective fiscal notes and coverage maps. The packet is also available for the public to view via LIMS. I know staff is also here and available to address any questions that committee members might have, but I will open up the floor for discussion, and before doing that, I will make the motion to approve the second option, and we'll ask for a second.
Second.
Thank you. That motion has been seconded. With that, I see Vice Chair Palmisano in queue.
Well, Madam Chair, I got myself in queue first because I very much wanted to advocate and move first for consideration option 1. But you've gotten ahead of me. So I will go ahead and share my interest in moving forward with the full expansion. We've been discussing ShotSpotter for quite some time. I don't see why we wouldn't be looking to include a data evidence-based expansion of this contract to to cover the most emergent hotspots since we last took a look at and expanded this. It wouldn't necessarily account for some other areas where there have been increases to gun violence. The costs for this request are less. And last cycle, I offered a legislative directive, which passed unanimously, and so did you. And I gave my full-throated support to looking at evaluating how we use ShotSpotter as a city, which is different than many others use ShotSpotter as cities and have maybe made changes in direction in years past. But I fail to understand why we would need to go with a reduced model here, especially since we are going to undergo the most comprehensive evaluation of how this technology is used in modern times, meaning with the technology as it exists today.
Thank you, Vice Chair Palmisano. I do see Councilmember Ellison, who's also been part of these conversations for several weeks, in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to be supporting this option because, as much as I've heard from community members who are concerned about the efficacy of this technology, I've also heard from constituents and community members who want to very much. This technology gives them peace of mind. They want to see this technology expanded, and are still committed to transparency. But they want to see this, and so it was in working with Councilmember Wansley to figure out, well, if we've got an expansion that is really, really robust, or that's how it felt to me. That's how it landed to me, that there was this robust expansion and this longer timeline, then maybe we can do a more moderate expansion, a more moderate timeline as we lean into some of this increased evaluation, some of this increased oversight over what this technology does and doesn't do. And so I really see this as an opportunity for us to, instead of turning this into a binary decision where you're either for the technology or against the technology, Councilmember Wansley, I was able to participate in some of these conversations as well, sat down with staff and basically tried to see, is there a pathway to unanimous consent throughout the council? I guess we don't know, we don't have a crystal ball, but this felt like instead of an extended timeline and more expansion, this felt like a good way for us to lean into some of that evaluation, but also get some answers and change direction based on that evaluation sooner rather than later. And so that's why I'm going to be supporting this today. It's not in action. It still allows us to have the technology. It still expands the technology, and it is ultimately an extension of the contract.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. I see Councilmember Cashman in queue.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. So, as Councilmember Ellison said, this is both an extension of the technology in our contract with Sound Thinking for 2 years until March of 2026, as well as an expansion of this technology. And the expansion is actually into my ward. So I felt like there was a lot of due diligence that I had to do in conversations with OCS and with other council members about what this means. What does having ShotSpotter technology in your neighborhood do for our residents? What can they expect? And I think some of those questions in terms of how we analyze the effectiveness of this technology are some we have answers to, and the staff have done a great job of outlining and presenting the data that we have, but there are some questions still. How does this impact, the quickness of a 911 response, the time on scene? How does this impact the ability to close cases, to produce evidence? So I really look forward to seeing the investigations, both the internal and the external investigation, come back to us with more data on the efficacy and the value of this investment that we're making as a city. And the external evaluation that we have in front of us that we've already passed is to come back by March of 2026. So I think it's appropriate for us to have a duration of a contract that ends at that time so that we can use the information that we'll have learned in March of 2026 to make a decision about whether to go forward with another investment of ShotSpotter or to invest that money in other strategies around gun violence. But I was wondering if a staff member would be willing to come forward and just share some of the questions that I had asked and for follow-up, one was around like Loring Park specifically with the high rises and the highway, how to mitigate how to address false activations. And the other question was about really just what the colors mean on this map. So the red hotspot that you see on this map is, my neighborhood, shared with Councilmember Osman, who's also here. So just wondering if you can explain your answers to those two questions.
Thank you, Jerry Jeffries. If you would like to offer a response to Councilmember Cashman's questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Wansley, Councilmember Cashman. I'm Jared Jeffries. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Office of Community Safety. So to answer your first question, Councilmember Cashman, after conferring with the vendor, with IT, and with our police department, it was determined based on what Sound Thinking typically does, there would be no irregularities with how they would implement or install in the Loring Park neighborhood. Just given the topography and the buildings, there wasn't any concerns there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And then in regard to the actual, I'm pulling up, the email that I sent previously with the answers to your question. But so in regards to the map that was displayed at the August 5th meeting, the red outline, so the red outline of a person, that's a gun-related homicide. Mm-hmm. Blue dot is a gun-related event, which we define as the sound of shots. So that's what will come into 911, an actual shooting or a person with a gun. And then the heat map is based off of the sound of shots calls, and the data is from January 1st, 2022 through April 1st, 2024.
Thanks. So can you just explain the sound of shot calls? What does that mean exactly for the color?
So that the blue dot, so that is the sum of all of the 911 calls of like gun-related events. So someone says, I think I heard gunshots coming from my alley. That's represented in there, as is confirmed shootings, as is shot spotter activations.
Okay, thank you. So that, that piece and like this map is a very good visual representation of the issues we're facing in our neighborhoods with gun-related crime. The red area really is a concentration of gun-related events.
Homicides.
What's that?
Homicides, the red outlines of the person.
But
yes,
the heat map.
Oh, yes.
The heat map part is concentration of gun-related events. Yes. So with our expansion, we are focusing on expanding into the area that has the highest concentration of gun-related events. The part that we're no longer proposing to expand into does not have red area. So I just want to note that this is, I think, a really data-informed decision, and we'll be supporting the motion for option 2.
Thank you, Councilmember Cashman. I see Vice Chair Palmisano in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I continue to support option 1 with a longer contract time for a lot less money and an expanded service area. 2 points of information that were in the paper over the last couple weeks. September 2nd, Lake and 13th. This is right on the edge of the existing area of shot spotter coverage, but it would be fully in the area of the expanded map, but it's not in this option 2. Example number 2, August 31st would be 2900 Grand was where there was gunfire and somebody shot dead, would be in the expanded zone, but not in this smaller area. Those are data points, and this is data-informed decision-making. Each of us represent our individual wards, and we advocate for their needs, but we also represent the best interests of the city as a whole. So I would like to stand up for those communities that are experiencing increased gun violence and provide them with services that will help respond to that increase. It also helps with coverage around the city. When time is taken up responding to calls of shots fired, they are not as available in other parts of our city. Option 2 here is carving out areas at the request of individual council members, I fear, and I do not see that in being in the best interest of our city as a whole. I got an email today from a retired 5th Precinct inspector. He was talking to me about how neighborhoods can change, and they can change for the better, and that's why we should be modifying this over time. He said, given the drastic shortage of MPD officers, ShotSpotter is the beat cop on the corner. I know there are remarkable neighbors in some of these neighborhoods. The city needs to do better to keep them safe. We know that gun violence disproportionately impacts our Black, Brown, and Native American communities. The presence of guns in shell casings are deeply traumatic to the community and especially to children. I see ShotSpotter as both preventive and responsive, two of the three pillars of our Safe and Thriving community reports. It's preventive in that it helps police narrow down hotspots and proactively apply additional violence prevention measures, like our group violence interrupters, to be present before shots are fired or something else happens. It is also responsive because it allows police to be notified and respond quickly and accurately as to where those shots are fired. There are documented cases of ShotSpotter's effect. We've heard this through previous presentations. Police say ShotSpotter data helped prove the location of the man who killed 9-year-old Trinity Addison Smith while she was jumping on a trampoline. He was later convicted of murder and sentenced to 37.5 years in prison. In February, ShotSpotter data led police to the scene of a dying man laying on the street. No one had called 911. In July, ShotSpotter data led police to an area where they found a victim lying in a front yard, dead. It was only because of ShotSpotter that the police knew to go to check out this particular location. Anyone could have found this body, even a child, causing further community and personal trauma. At its core, ShotSpotter is about giving a sense of location and accuracy. It narrows down an area where multiple 911 calls come in about gunshots, and the police have a better idea as to where to respond when they have ShotSpotter data. Therein lies the greater benefit. The aggregate data over time helps us allocate resources to the most impacted areas. Given our police staffing today, that's incredibly important. It's a tool that can lead to evidence recovery and patterns of behavior. It's a tool that can allow us to send MPD or regulatory services after an investigation is complete to clean up the area. This lends to the decency and livability in areas that are more impacted by gun violence. I don't think that ShotSpotter is perfect. We've put forward measures to address and to evaluate how we make it better, but it has gotten better over the years and much more accurate. Isn't this program worth it if it leads to just one person receiving life-saving medical care sooner? It is to me, and I would prefer that this committee forward this without recommendation to full council and let the full council vote as to which option we're selecting here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Palmisano. I see Councilmember Vita in queue.
Thank you, Chair Wansley. I think maybe Council Members Cashman and Palmisano answered the question I had partially, but I still need a little bit more clarity. I guess I'm trying to understand the rationale behind how we got to some of the technology being expanded. Not like I understood the heat map portion of it, but like I thought it was Ward 6, 7, and 10 that this would have been expanded into, and I've had quite a few people reach out actually in support of having the additional technology, but I'm not sure how, like, what and who made the determination that the technology would only be expanded partially and to where it would be expanded.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Vita. So just for context, for almost a month now, we've had these conversations in this committee with staff about both the expansion and the extension of this contract. A number of council members, those as you name, who wards would be directly impacted, communicated concerns around that coverage to staff, as well as those of us in AO, and saying we want to see if there's other options possible. So we work with staff to say, are there other options possible for this body to consider? And that's where option 2 came from. I move support for that as an option, but as Vice Chair Palmisano noted, you all can also voice support and move for option 1 as well if you would like that.
Chair Wansley, I appreciate that, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking, you kind of answered it. So essentially, council member said, I don't want that in my ward, and don't put it in my ward, and like scale back, because otherwise I haven't seen anything presented before me that shows, this isn't needed here. We've been talking for 2 months about these wards needing an extension of ShotSpotter, and now someone has made a determination that part of Ward 6 and 7 are gonna get it. And that's what I'm trying to understand here. Like, who made the decision outside of what it sounds like were council members saying, I don't want this in my ward?
I didn't say that part, but what I did say is
You said there were
I
meetings with
said-
council members.
Yes, I said there was meetings with staff and council members who vocalized concerns and that they asked for additional options, which all of us can do. Some of us have been part of contract amendment processes. This is something that everyone can do. I believe you've also done it as well.
No, let's not murky this.
I'm sorry,
This is
Council
simple.
Member Vita, let me finish. So you asked for that. No one made a determination. We brought an option that you could either not vote for or you could vote for.
Listen to yourself.
First and foremost, be respectful.
What are you even saying?
Be respectful, decorum. You asked the question. I'm trying to answer it. You do not like the answer. I'm asking, would
It's
you like
not
to move
answering my
forward with the
questions.
option one? You said who made the determination. Would you like to move forward with option one? You can make that proposal.
I know what I can do.
Then do
I'm
it.
on the committee with you.
Then you can do that now.
I know what I can do. My question is about who made the decision for option two. We've been
named
talking about
that.
option one for 2-3 months, a year probably.
Councilmember Vita, I literally just named how we got to option two.
You
If
did
that
not.
information did not satisfy you, I don't know what to tell you. But outside of that, do
Okay.
you have any additional questions?
Moving along.
Okay, so you're done. Great. Any additional folks in queue? Both myself. So I wanted to name context about option two in terms of what is listed. So the changes in this one and the original one is the original one goes to 2027. The modified one in option two goes till March of 2026, which aligned with the independent evaluation that got approved, as well as the internal evaluation that's happening that was brought forward by Vice Chair Palmisano. So that gives us the ability, as Councilmember Cashman highlighted, to get more information that we've have not been able to receive to make a decision in March 2026. Is this program meeting the efficacy of our needs? And then we can go from there. The second part of this is the modified coverage or geographic coverage. So this is the part where it does cover certain pockets of Ward 6 and the edge of Ward 7 as well. What I do want to name, which is also addressed in this heat map, there is absolutely additional resources that can continue to be deployed by OCS and MPD. All the shots are listed on this heat map. So MPD is very much aware, as well as OCS, of the hotspots in these regions because they're still being tracked by 911. Council members are also relaying this information. Councilmember Osmond named that a couple weeks ago when we were debating passing the funding of the summer safety initiatives where he said, I know where these areas are in my ward, and I have not been able to get a response from OCS around how we can deploy additional resources, being in the form of violence prevention leaders and partners, or even investigators. So that is another thing that we can take up this budget session, because I believe Mayor Fry only allocated 2 additional FTE investigators to support the volume of cases. We know it's much more larger than that. We need way more investigators to really meet that load. So that's something that we could do when we're talking about supporting the continued deployment of additional resources to address gun violence in our communities, as well as what we took action on today of looking at how do we expand non-armed violence prevention organizations and leaders in our community who are also doing patrols and have shown to be effective in addressing gun violence. So I just want to give some context of what is actually in the second proposal and the differences between that and the original contract. So with that, I did see Councilmember Cashman in queue.
Thank you. I'm on queue for Vice President Chugtai.
Then bring speaker management. All right, Council Vice President Chugtai.
I apologize, Madam Chair. Thank you. I wanted to speak on your motion to approve option 2 to authorize an extension of this contract through March 2026 and expand coverage into the hotspot that was in the heat map and in the presentation that we received a couple of committee meetings ago. As others have stated, we have a couple of different evaluations one that is internal to the enterprise and one that is a third-party external into how the city uses this technology that will be coming before the body in 2026. And I think it's always helpful when we receive that type of extensive information that we are spending significant resources on between staff time and acquiring a vendor to complete that type of evaluation, that we're able to take action on it. And I think this option allows us to continue our contract with Sound Thinking Inc. through that time when we'll have some additional supplemental information to help us best understand how we move forward. So wanted to express my support for option 2, and then also thank you, Madam Chair and Councilmember Ellison, for your work with the Office of Community Safety and Commissioner Barnett on finding a path forward that allows us to continue to use this important technology and allows us to figure out how we make best long-term decisions on the use of technology within our law enforcement ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Chuktai. Next, I did see Vice Chair Palmisano in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to point out the contract changes. This isn't a contract extension. It's shortening the contract that was originally proposed and has been worked on for months. A couple months ago, my colleagues were concerned about the cost of this. Now, with option 2, if we choose to keep this beyond the deadline, we will pay more, a lot more, for this technology. I just wanted to point that out financially because it was a concern mentioned earlier. I would like to put forward and see if I could get a second on a substitute, which would be to forward this to full council without recommendation.
Second.
And I'd like to take a vote on that.
All right, Vice Chair Palmisano has asked to move forward without recommendation, the original proposal. I did want to offer a quick clarification. Again, it's in LIMS. There are different fiscal amounts here, and the fiscal notes does show the difference. So folks can find that out too. But with that, let's do voice. Sorry, and I'm going to make sure I'm not seeing anyone because my computer just restarted in queue. All right, let's do a voice vote. Sorry, roll call vote. My bad.
On the motion to forward without recommendation,
Yes.
I'm sorry, which option are we forwarding without recommendation?
So, Vice Chair Palmisano just made the motion to forward without recommendation, option 1.
Option 1, thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Vita?
Aye.
Ellison?
No.
Cashman?
No.
Vice President Chuktai?
No.
Vice Chair Palmisano?
Aye.
Chair Wansley?
Nay.
We have 2 ayes and 4 nays.
That motion fails. I'm looking to see if we're back in queue. We're returning to the original motion that I made of moving forward option number 2, which is the modified contract. So with that, we can take another roll call vote because I do not see anyone else in discussion.
Councilmember Vita?
No.
Ellison?
Aye.
Cashman?
Aye.
Vice President Chuktai?
Aye.
Vice Chair Palmisano?
No.
Chair Wansley?
Aye.
We have 4 ayes and 2 nays.
That motion carries, so that item will be forwarded to full council. We have concluded all business on today's agenda, so I will call this meeting adjourned.